Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Well, it's a day a lot of Browns fans have been looking forward to. Players back in Berea, getting things underway in Todd Monken's first off-season program. Fedor Sanders has been in the building quite a bit. He's out in Berea. Quinshon Judkins as well. Good to see. The Browns' second-year running back moving around after off-season surgery. Another second-year guy, Dylan Sampson, figures to be a pretty big part of what Todd Monken wants to do offensively. Again, the first part of the off-season program, some working out. They can talk about football, but getting things ramped up for Todd Monken's first year as head coach. All right, Brady Quinn, former Browns quarterback, talking about the challenges that face Fedor Sanders as a second-year guy with a new head coach and a new offense.
I always think it's difficult. You know, at this point in time in his career, you're still learning this game. It's a different game than college. The way the field's even designed and how you go about, looking at defenses and reading coverage and defense, it's a transition. And so, not only are you adapting to that, you're adapting to last year's offense, the footwork they wanted you to play within, the timing and rhythm of all of that. Adapting to the receivers that you're throwing to, how they work in and out of cuts. Like, everyone's different, so the timing's going to be different. There's some wide receivers that when you throw a 5-step plant throw, or let's say it's 3-step and gun plant throw or off one hitch, sometimes with those guys, if they're a little longer strided, they might take them longer to get out of the cut. So you're going to take a little bigger drop. You can time that up a little easier. Some guys are quicker and they're faster and out of it. So you have to get off that, third step, hitching back up to throw much faster. So there's just all those little nuances that you're still adapting to. And for him to have to learn, again, a new offense, a new language, a new system, that can be difficult. And it's one of the reasons why I think when you see a lot of young quarterbacks in the league, when they have success early on, it's usually because there's a lot of continuity in the system and the players around them and the coaching staff. And unfortunately, that just hasn't been the case for Cleveland pretty much since they came back in 1999.
Well, Brady Quinn knows that firsthand, without question. All right, ESPN's Browns reporter Daniel Afuse, who he thinks the Browns are looking at with the 6th overall pick.
My best guess is that Andrew Berry finds some way to trade out of the 6th overall pick. I think that when all is said and done, we're into April, so Barry said they're really going to start going into scenarios and different situations and hypotheticals and really planning out their method. I think that as we get closer to the draft, they're gonna look at 6 and say, hey, I think we can get a little bit more out of this as opposed to just picking a player at 6. The Cowboys have been floated out there as a potential trade up partner. If they can move back 4 to 6 spots, and still get one of those top tackles or wide receivers, but also probably get an extra 3rd-round pick. I'm thinking in a hypothetical, I think that the Browns would be pretty satisfied with that. And then from there, you just kind of go best player available with that first pick, whether it's wide receiver or offensive tackle, I would presume.
Plenty of talk about that. Mary Kay Cabot, as well as Emory Hunt from CBS Sports, will join us in just a few minutes. All right, Guardians game moved to the afternoon because of the cold weather. Taking on the Royals, game 2 of a 3-game series. Kevin Williams got the start for the Guardians. Second inning, leaves one up, and Carter Jensen takes it out of the park, 1-0 Royals. The only hit that Gavin Williams gave up in 5 2/3 innings. 5th inning, Stephen Kwan hits one out into center field. It drops in. That ties the game up at 1-1. Stayed tied until the 9th inning. Brian Rocchio hits one out into right field. And C.J. Kafis will score on the play, 2-1. The Guardians walk it off. Same 2 teams will wrap up the 3-game series tomorrow. Cole Reagans going against Joey Cantillo for the Guardians, as the Guardians and Royals split the first 2 games of the series. All right, Cavaliers in Memphis taking on the Grizzlies. Donovan Mitchell and James Harden both unable to go, not playing, getting some rest. Cavs up 68-67 early in the 3rd. Evan Mobley finds Sam Merrill, and Merrill knocks down the 3. Quan Ellis to Mobley with a little alley-oop there, and Mobley throws down the dunk. Craig Porter Jr. to Schroeder for the bucket. The Cavs win it 142-126, 50th win of the season, and Memphis recorded 29 three-pointers. Cavs 3 games remaining, a game behind the Knicks for third spot in the East. They take on the Hawks tomorrow night, Rocket Arena. They'll actually play them back-to-back games. Hawks could be the first-round matchup for the Cavs. We'll talk Cavs with Chris Fedor a little later in the show. Kay Cabot is up first talking Browns when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Browns play-by-play voice Andrew Siciliano with his read of the Browns quarterback competition.
Andrew Berry, Jimmy Haslam, whomever, all said the same thing, and that is Todd Monken has full control to name a starting quarterback, and whomever gives him the best chance to win will be the guy. You can't look at a team, at a locker room, when you're the new head coach, week 1, and pick a guy that obviously hasn't won the job. You can't. Because you're lost at that point.
Yep.
So if Deshaun is obviously the best guy, I don't know how you don't play him. How do you look at a locker room if he truly, truly delivers a knockout punch and wins this job and say, nah, we're going to go with one of the other two?
That courtesy of ESPN Cleveland. Let's welcome in Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Kay, that's a really valid point. The quarterback is going to be the first major decision for Todd Monken, and he can't sell it as anything. The guys in that locker room know who will have won that competition.
I think they will, but the hard part about it is going to be the fact that I think both guys are going to look really, really good in practice. It's a little easier to look good in practice than it is when you have 300-pound men bearing down on you, right? So I don't know that anyone is going to have a real accurate gauge on who will give them the best chance to win until they're actually out on the football field doing it. Now, they will have opportunities to glean a lot of things from these practices, but to actually say who's going to get out there and perform the best on game day, I think that's going to be a little tricky.
I know you've had a couple of Hey Mary Kays about this, about Deshaun Watson. Do you think Watson can still produce after the injuries or rust, or do you think Jimmy Haslam and the ownership group is trying to justify the money that he's being paid? And also, what happens next year if Watson does play great? Is there a way the Browns can keep him financially?
Well, we will soon see how he looks physically. We've seen some videos. We've heard some reports. We watched him practice in December for 3 weeks, but we only got to watch the first 15 or 20 minutes of those practices. So we will soon see what this looks like when it's out on the grass. But I do think that it's going to be a fair competition. And I think that the winner of this competition will be based on their performance in these practices. Again, I don't know that that will necessarily inform game day performances, but they're not going to go by age, experience, contract, marketability, or any of those kinds of things. What they're going to do is they're going to choose the winner based on who they think looks the best and performs the best in these next 9 weeks or so. And Todd Monken has told us he would like to know his starting quarterback by the time he comes out of spring ball. So certainly by the time they're done, they might not announce it, but by the time they're done with minicamp, he's going to know who his QB1 is.
So Quincy Avery, Deshaun's quarterback coach, showed us this video. Deshaun Watson getting ready, working out with Jerry Jeudy last week ahead of the off-season program, which Watson is now in Berea, or will be, getting a chance to digest the playbook. But it's kind of interesting, Mary Kay, your read, just Watson working with Judy. It's an interesting dynamic and probably a good idea.
Yeah, it's a very, very good idea. I think it is significant. Well, first of all, logistically, they're both in South Florida, so I think that really helps. It makes it very easy. He's also been working out with Isaiah Bond and Jamari Thrash, who I think you're also seeing there. And so, but I think it's really good for Jerry to get his timing and his chemistry down with Deshaun. It will help them both in this competition. It will help them both a lot. And they really need to bring Jerry up off the mat and get him back to peak form if they want to be successful this year in the passing game. I think they need to add two more really, really good weapons to the pass catching core. But certainly Jerry and Deshaun working out together can't hurt either of them.
Yeah, and again, you want that chemistry between wide receiver and quarterback, so all good. At the owners' meeting, which you were at, Jimmy Haslam talked about what he saw from Fedor Sanders. I know you wrote an article about that. Take us through what you found out about Jimmy Haslam talking about that rookie season from Fedor.
Well, the big takeaway there was that he noted that Fedor Sanders got an education on exactly what it takes to be a pro quarterback. And I think what he meant by that is he learned he had to study more film, work harder on his body, and all those kinds of things. And they also revealed that he's been around in Berea most of the offseason. He's gotten to know Todd Monken some, which is good. They haven't been able to really talk football, but they've gotten to know each other just on a personal level a little bit. I think that will help him a lot. And he's worked really, really hard. They're happy with the work that he has put in so far. Jimmy Haslam said his body looks different. That's good. And certainly he's probably digesting that playbook and trying to get that thing down so he can hit the ground running when these practices begin.
So it's a quarterback competition. Do you think we'll see more starters play a little bit longer in preseason?
Actually, I do. He was very, very reluctant to play the starters in preseason. I think that Todd Monken will probably ramp that up a little bit, knowing that he's installing a whole new scheme on the offensive side of the ball, and then they have a brand new defensive coordinator. So I do think that you're going to see a little bit more of the starters in preseason, and I think that's probably going to be really smart.
Another one of your Hey Mary Kays. What do you think happens with Dillon Gabriel? Do you think someone tries to trade for him? And what's the future hold for Dillon Gabriel? He's kind of the forgotten guy in this quarterback room.
Yeah, well, I think that's still up in the air because Andrew Berry made it abundantly clear that it's wholly realistic for them to add another quarterback to the mix here. And he believes that that quarterback will be a young quarterback. Now, even if they keep Dillon Gabriel, they're going to add a fourth camp arm. So we know that. But just in terms of someone who could actually possibly compete for the starting job legitimately, they might draft a quarterback. We don't know. They might draft a quarterback. And maybe it's Ty Simpson, maybe it's another guy. Maybe it's Garrett Nussmeier or Drew Aller or someone. In the event that they do that, then I think it increases the likelihood that they perhaps think about trading Dillon Gabriel, because you're not going to need all of those young guys. If someone has some merit and has some starts under his belt and can go out and help another football team, and they feel like they've seen enough of him here, then I think that they would be willing to trade Dillon Gabriel. It's not that they're clamoring to do that. They're more than happy to develop him as well. But if they did add one of those rookies, I coid see them trying to move him.
So the Browns signed a cornerback that played a little bit with the Texans yesterday, Miles Bryant. What do we know about him? I know you wrote an article. Where does he fit into the scheme of things with the Browns?
Well, he's a depth piece right now. He's got some experience. He's started some games. He has some time under his belt, and they need guys like that, especially because we now know that Martin Emerson is not going to be back, or probably isn't going to be back. Andrew Berry said at the meetings he feels that Martin needs to go somewhere where he can compete for a starting job. That's not here anymore because of Tyson Campbell. So I think that Miles Bryant is just added to the room, added to the pile, and he'll come in here, he'll compete, and he will also work out on special teams.
So the players, as we saw earlier, gathering in Berea, getting ready for off-season program. It gets underway today. You'll be able to talk to the players and some of the coaches tomorrow. What are you paying attention to? What at this point? What are some of the things that you got your ear open for?
Well, I don't think we're not going to be able to watch anything right now because there's nothing to watch. These first 2 weeks are just conditioning, and then they have meetings and they can do their physical rehab and stuff like that. But there's nothing that's going on the field. So we are not really going to be in the weight room or anything like that tomorrow when we go out there. So I'm expecting that we'll probably talk to Fedor Sanders tomorrow. I don't know that Deshaun Watson is going to be ready to talk yet, but I'm thinking that maybe they'll bring Fedor out there. Not 100% sure about that, though, even because they do have a mini camp coming up on April 21st. And then we also have a series of OTAs that will be out there for. So, maybe they'll wait and make, Deshaun and or Fedor available at the start of the voluntary, again, it's voluntary, mini camp on April 21st. But we'll see. I'm most, of course, interested in the quarterback competition, and hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit of a handle on that when we go out there tomorrow.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about the draft, some Myles Garrett as well. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Daryl Ryder on the case for the Browns potentially drafting running back Jeremiah Love at 6th overall.
He's a guy you can play in the slot. He's not just a pure running back, the prototypical you just hand the ball off to him. You can move him around the field quite a bit. And also, too, he could help you cover up some of the warts you have at the quarterback position right now. Because let's be honest about it, that problem's not getting solved this year. You're going to go into 2027 with the same problem you've had for the last 27 years. So if you can bring in a player that can help not just be a game changer, but also be a little bit of a safety valve, I do think that kind of makes sense.
Mary Kay, I know you were asked in one of your Hey Mary Kays, what do you think about Jeremiah Love at number 6? Some people have him graded as the best player in this entire draft.
Yes, some people do. And I think if he is there at number 6, I think it gives the Browns a very unique opportunity to trade away the pick, because I think he is someone that teams would climb up to grab. I think they would do that for some of the defensive ends as well. And so if you've got a Reuben Bain or a David Bailey or somebody that slips there, or Jeremiah Love that slips to number 6, then I think it increases the likelihood that the Browns might be able to trade out of that pick, which is what I think they probably would really like to do. I don't know that they feel compelled to have to stay right there at number 6 and take someone. I think they would prefer to add some assets for next year when the quarterback class should be very robust.
All right. I know you've talked a lot about Ty Simpson. What are your thoughts about Simpson and as he relates specifically to the Browns?
Yeah, I was on the radio with Ken and Anthony on 92 last week, and Ken held my feet to the fire and, made me name who I would take at number 6 last week, which I'm not even really ready to do that. Just not really ready to do that yet. But I did mention if I had to make a pick on that particular day, and I reserved the right to change my mind, that on that particular day, I would take Ty Simpson. And I got a lot of pushback, a lot of blowback for that. But the reason why I said that is because if you don't see a generational talent at number 6, if you don't see somebody that is worth that very lofty pick, and you're not 100% certain about someone at another position and you can't trade out of it and you are stuck right there, then I would take a chance on a quarterback. Because if you hit on it, then you find yourself with a quarterback of the future that can help you out for at least the next 5 years on a very cheap rookie contract. If you don't hit on it, and you only usually hit on about 50% of the first round picks anyways, if you don't hit on it, then you can come back next year and you can try again. I'm not living in my fears about missing on a quarterback in the first round. Back in 2022, I advocated that they take Malik Willis with their, I think it was their 14 overall pick. And people thought I was crazy for that too. But now if you look back on that, that might not have been the worst decision in the world. Malik just got a $60 million contract from the Dolphins, and the Browns would have had to develop him and surround him with a lot of talent, but they may have been onto something if they had stayed right there and done that.
When you look at 6, is it fair to say that's at 6, it's a guy that has to make other guys around him better? That's kind of like an impact player. And I'm thinking, if it's a wide receiver, can Carnell Tate make Jerry Jeudy and Harold Fannin better? If it's an offensive tackle, can Monroe Freeling make the guys on the offensive line a little bit better? When I look at a pick in the top 10, that's kind of what I feel like. I feel like you got to get a guy that makes players around him better.
Well, that's what you would hope. Once again, number 6 is very, very high. That is a high pick, and you really want to get something of value. You want to get an impact player there. You want to get a perennial Pro Bowl player there. And in a perfect world, a future Hall of Famer. That's how high that pick is. Now, unfortunately for the Cleveland Browns, in the 2 years that they have had these sky-high picks, last year and this year, there just really haven't been the quarterbacks. So their timing has been really bad with having the number 2 overall pick and then having the number 6 overall pick. This year was supposed to be a really, really good quarterback year, and it didn't turn out to be the case. Now, of course, people are talking about next year as almost being another one of those generational years for the quarterbacks. So, yes, you definitely want number 6 to be that impact player that can help guys around him be better, that can elevate your team, be a game changer, a franchise changer. And I don't know if that guy is there. And if he's not, I definitely do think that they will try to trade out.
When you look at trading back, what does a home run trade back look like for Andrew Berry? And I know this again from one of your Hey Mary Kays. I think it's a good question.
Well, I think it has to start with trying to get a first-round pick next year. Once again, by the time you get to the draft this year, you are not going to know yet if Shedeur Sanders can be your quarterback of the future. So you have to be planning ahead to next year and thinking that perhaps you might need to get your quarterback next year. Therefore, if you can pick up an extra first-round pick, and that won't be easy, but if you can do that, it positions you nicely to be able to go out and secure one of those guys next season. And you would have then 2 first-round picks once again. You can package them. You can do different things. So if they can do that, that would certainly constitute the home run that we're talking about here. Again, it was a lot easier last year when they had the number 2 overall pick. Not quite as easy when they have the number 6 overall pick, but nevertheless, you might be able to get someone to offer you something like that.
Myles Garrett, they redo his contract in a way that makes him possible to be traded. I know that was a hot topic at the owners' meeting, and Jimmy Haslam talked about it. And you also had a Hey Mary Kay asking you if you thought he would be traded post-June 1st. Take us through those two things.
I don't think that he's going to be traded post-June 1st, and I really do believe the Browns when they say they're adamant about not trading him. However, sometimes things can change a month after you make those comments. You never really know exactly what's going to happen on draft day, what will fall your way, what somebody might be willing to offer you. If somebody makes them an offer that they absolutely cannot refuse, will they do it? If they have an opportunity to replace him with another edge rusher in this draft, would they consider doing it? I really don't think so. I believe them when they say this is not happening. But once again, you can never say never. And everyone does have a price. And if someone is willing to go the extra mile and feels that he is the final piece to their puzzle and makes them just a franchise-changing offer, then I think it's something to think about. But Jimmy Haslam really laid it out there very explicitly about why they don't want to do this.
Mary Kay Cabot, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Mary Kay.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Always great Browns coverage. Cleveland.com, as well as the pages of The Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Emory Hunt from CBS Sports straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Former Browns quarterback Brady Quinn from Fox Sports now talking about why he thinks the Browns should start Deshaun Watson week 1.
Yeah, he's the most experienced. I think if you, again, it's a long-winded conversation, but ultimately you've paid him and you're paying him. So you got to kind of see what's still there, in my opinion. I think if he's healthy and he's able to, then you got to play him, and then you can move on to the younger guy depending on how things go. But that's how I would see the beginning of the season. You go with the guy who's got the most experience, the most starts doing it, and see where he is at, and see if there's anything left to salvage because of the commitment that you made however many years ago. That maybe sounds like more of a business decision and answer, but that's what this league is, and that's what I think you've got to find out this year before you start over again next year, because it's the biggest financial burden. And so before you kind of move on or see what's there, I think you've got to kick the tires on that one last time, and then you can turn it over to Fedor, or then you can turn it over to Dylan Gabriel if he's there as well.
With that, let's welcome in Emory Hunt from CBS Sports. Emory, the starting quarterback in particular, is going to be the first major decision for a new head coach. He has to go with the guy that looks the best.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. I slightly disagree with Brady, although Brady makes a fantastic point when he brings up, if the money is what's going to dictate. However, because we haven't seen that Deshaun Watson for some time, you got to know which Deshaun Watson you're going to throw out there regardless of the check. You know what I'm saying? So if he's going to be the guy, and again, keeping with the theme of every quarterback that has looked better post Kevin Stefanski, if Deshaun Watson looks like he did in Houston, then pound for pound, he's the better player. But if he still looks a little bit injured coming off the multiple injuries, shoulder being one of them, the Achilles being two of them, then you have to go with the guy that started last, that has built up a lot of momentum, and that's Fedor Sanders. And if you have to go back to Deshaun Watson, okay, at least we can get veteran stable play from him, or you just consider the contract a wash at this point, and he's going to be our QB2, and therefore if we have to go to him, we can. But if you're going to start with the youth, then start with Fedor Sanders. But it all depends on which Deshaun Watson and how he looks out there when the bullets are flying for real.
All right, this is an NFL executive talking about the Browns' remade offensive line, which they've got 4 new pieces in through free agency. They had to do it. Their line was absolutely abysmal last year, which was crazy. It shows you how quickly it can go on the offensive line. They had Bill Callahan there 2 years ago. I give them a lot of credit. Obviously, these guys are not all superstars, but they had to do it. First of all, I can't argue with that offensive line was not good for a couple of years. What do you think of what they did on the line, and how good can it be? Is it done yet?
I think it can be good, and also they still have a lot more work to do. I love what they've done so far. You've answered legitimately 4 of the 5 spots along your offensive line. You got a starting right tackle, starting center. You brought back a guy that you love, that guard. You have another guard in there as well, and you still have DeJuan Jones, who slimmed down a bit. It looks great physically. We'll see what that looks like when he gets out there on the grass. He's your right now starting left tackle. So the offensive line going into the season looks a lot better than it did going into last season. Now, the only thing they have left to do is just continue to stockpile that depth behind those guys that are starting. But they got off to a great start in free agency, which now puts them in a situation where they're not pressed at number 6. They can literally go best player available, or they can build for the future along the offensive line and go that route as well.
We're going to talk draft, and you have the football game plan, your draft guide that's coming out. We'll talk about that next segment. But let's talk about this receiving core. When you look at the receiving core, what do you see, and what types of receivers do you think the Browns need to add to make it better?
You know, I like what they have right now, but I feel like everybody is playing a spot ahead on the depth chart in terms of positioning, right? So I feel like Jerry Jeudy is a very good receiver, but he would be best as a Z receiver as opposed to an X. I feel like Isaiah Bond is a terrific slot player, will be better there as opposed to playing kind of this hybrid role. You don't really know what you're going to get from Cedric Tillman, so he's kind of the guy that can come in situationally. You have 2 good tight ends. We include that in the receiving core. So when I look at the Browns, right now they need a bona fide X receiver, someone that can be that go-to guy down in, down out, that you can trust to win short, intermediate, and deep down the field. And I feel like this draft has a bevy of X receivers that would fit in perfectly with the Browns receiving core that allows everyone to move to their more natural slot.
All right, we're going to talk about who you think fits in this draft next segment. But let's talk about Todd Monken, what we know of him offensively. What do you expect this offense of the Browns to look like, and what do you think he tries to do with this talent that he has, what we know of the talent that he has?
I feel like we're going to see a lot more intermediate passing game, and number one, but it's going to be a lot of movement. He has some great talent at his disposal. You got backs in the backfield that can catch the football. You have a legitimate tight end that's a matchup problem. So you can look at that in terms of how you looked at Isaiah Likely in Baltimore. You had that in Harold Fannin. You have some explosiveness at wide receiver in Jerry Jeudy and Isaiah Bond. So you are able to play the East and West game if you want to. You know, the quick perimeter game, get the ball out quickly to these playmakers, let those guys make one miss and get upfield. You can play the vertical game. We saw Shedeur Sanders do that last year with both Jerry Jeudy and Isaiah Bond, get those guys deeper down the field, having that deep connection. And so now this offense can expand a little bit more. It's going to be tougher to defend because the offensive line is better. And not just in particular the tackles, but guard center guard is better for the Browns. So therefore the run game will be consistent. The pass protection will be consistent on the interior. Therefore, you're able to get more shots at the intermediate level down the field. I think we'll see a Shedeur Sanders. Let's say if Shedeur Sanders is a starter, right? I think we'll see his yards per attempt hover around 7.5 to 8, which is killing it in the intermediate level of the field. He'll have his timely deep shots, but I think he could live in that 7.5 to 8 yards per attempt, which is just constantly pushing the ball upfield, and that run game is going to average at least 4.5, I'd say 4.7 to 5 yards a carry.
So if we look at a difference between like a Todd Monken offense, Kevin Stefanski offense, is it Todd Monken kind of searches out mismatches and his players over plays, whereas Kevin is more a system guy and you hit this and this guy's going to be open over here? Is that accurate? That's kind of my read of it.
That is Shedeur Sanders-like accuracy right there, my friend. That's exactly what that is. That's exactly what you want to do as a coach. You want to find mismatches at this level, right? At this level, it's about finding the mismatch more so than scheme. College is about scheme because you only got 20 hours a week to work with the players. But here, everybody has all day, all year to work on scheme. So, okay, assume you know my scheme like the back of your hand. Where is the mismatch? Is my X better than your O? And if that's the case, that's the matchup you exploit. And you have to find those over the course of 50 offensive plays in a game. And I think that's the difference between Todd Monken. We saw it at the collegiate level because he was able to get the most out of the guys he had to work with. You're talking about, a former walk-on in Stetson Bennett that kept a former 5-star and Carson Beck on the side, and Brock Vandergriff on the side. So because he had to work with that, he got the best out of those options. He got the best out the tight end group because that's where most of the talent was. Got the best out the run game because that's where one particular season, that's where the talent was. So I like Todd Monken. I like how he thinks. It's players over plays, Jimmy's over Joe's, X's over O's, and he does a great job in finding the right one to get the ball to.
Now, as I think of the Browns, I think Dylan Sampson is a guy that you can find mismatches with, and I think Harold Fannin is another guy. Those are guys, okay, with Fannin, you want to put a safety on him, he's bigger, he's stronger. You want to put a linebacker on him, he's faster. You could say the same thing with Sampson. Those are two guys that I think figure into what Todd Monken likes to do.
And if you think about it this way, too, because I like where your head's at as well, when you look at Sampson in conjunction with Judkins, both guys, I love how selfless they are as teammates. So they don't mind blocking for each other going east and west. Remember how the Browns back in the day had Kevin Mack and Ernest Biner kind of in the same backfield at the same time? You can do similar things with these guys because they don't mind blocking for one another, but they also can catch the ball out of the backfield. Sampson much more explosive as a receiver, but you don't lose much when you have either or out there on the field. But also with you having both on the field, they're going to win one-on-one versus any linebacker that you put against them. Now that really opens up the passing game because your linebackers have to be cognizant of stopping the run, but they have to be cognizant of being able to cover these guys out in space one-on-one. These option routes will be deadly for those guys because that's how versatile their skill set is in conjunction to Harold Fannin and in conjunction with everybody else.
Emory Hunt from CBS Sports and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we're going to talk plenty about the draft. Emory has the football game plan 2026. The draft guy will talk about that as well as how the Browns could attack this draft. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns and NFL draft with Emory Hunt from CBS Sports. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, I would like to know why nobody in Cleveland is talking about Taylor Green, the 6'6", 2.25 quarterback for Arkansas. He looks like Randall Cunningham. He can run, he can throw, and yet nobody's talking about him. I can't understand it. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Emory, you've done a draft guide. Tell us what you see when you look at Taylor Green and how he might fit into the NFL.
Well, that's my comp for Taylor Green. It is Randall Cunningham. If you want to go more contemporary, you could throw out Colin Kaepernick. You could throw out Vince Young. All of that applies to Taylor Green, and he's my number 2 quarterback in this class. And the reason why he's number 2 is because he has all of those physical skills. And what I love about his makeup is the fact that I watched him work 2 straight years with Bobby Petrino. We've seen what that looks like when guys of Taylor Green's caliber get to work with Bobby Petrino. The last time we saw that manifest itself was Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying that's Lamar Jackson reincarnated with Taylor Green, but the reason why I did use the Randall Cunningham comp is because he has the Gumby-like athleticism. He's very bendy, has an elongated release, and Randall Cunningham was a second-round pick coming out of UNLV. I feel like you can get a Taylor Green on day 2 or day 3 and have a guy that you can groom, develop, that wants to learn, that has a unique skill set, that can make any throw on the field. It's just about getting his footwork timed up to where he's throwing the football. A lot of times all of that could be off, which leads to some of the passes being a little bit off or a little bit high. But in terms of playmaking ability, man, if Arkansas had a better defense, they win at least 9 or 10 games last season because of how talented Taylor Green is.
Yeah, and he is, I don't say this lightly, he's Lamar Jackson-like with his athletic ability. Not quite there with the quarterback, but he's that good of an athlete.
Oh, very. He's legitimately running. It's so weird to watch him run because he takes 2 steps and he's already covered 10 yards. So his stride makes it look like an HBCU drum major marching down the field. That's how he just moves up and down the field. It's like, wow, you think there's a play versus Tennessee where it was like engage 8, 15 guys blitzed off the edge for Tennessee, and all he did was spin out and go right down the sideline for about 20 yards. It's crazy how long his stride is.
All right, at 6, what makes more sense to you for the Browns? Wide receiver, tackle, or a different position?
I've been torn with this. Like early in the process when we talked, it was more about you had a process. Then we get free agency. All right, they did a lot of good work. They have now the luxury of going best player available, so they could even take a position player from some other position, right? But what I think is this, and all throughout the year, we see this play up. Nobody cares about offensive line until you need an offensive lineman, right? Nobody wants to take off. They love the idea of the offensive lineman until it's time to take one. Then nobody wants to take one. Then it's week 9. They're like, man, we can't block you. Well, so here's the thing. I said a lot to say offensive line is probably the more valuable. If you are going to sit there and say in week 9 and week 10, these offensive linemen don't grow on trees. They're not going to just come available. Well, if you find one that's good, take them because you get them cheap, you get them inexpensive, you get them young, and he's in your building. You can walk out the door right now and trip over and find a receiver, And so, but you talk about these linemen don't grow on trees, so I would be more inclined to go tackle first and then offensive line, then wide receiver later. Because if you go tackle early, now you get the best one that you want, the best one on your board, the guy that you covet for a longer period of time. You can grab that and secure that. You don't have to worry about him coming available quickly. With receivers, because we see the passing game so prevalent in college football, you're going to find receivers, year over year, round after round. And I think that's a little bit more in my mindset as opposed to saying, well, we could wait on the tackle and get a receiver first at 6. Now let's get the tackle first. And then we get whichever good receiver that's there that can play at 24.
Who is the top tackle on your board that would make sense? And then ask the same thing about top receiver.
Monroe Freeling has been my top tackle since before the combine, and I'm steadfast on that because he could play left tackle. He's technically sound. He has great footwork. He has great core strength. So he does a lot of things tackle-wise rather well. So he could really be a plug-and-play guy if DeJuan Jones isn't really back healthy. But let's say DeJuan Jones is back healthy and ready to go, and now you can kind of ease, Monroe Freeling in there in time at times, or you can kind of take a Titus Howard, move him inside, and then now you can put DeJuan Jones on the right side and Freeling on the left side. And now you've done maximize the offensive line. So either way, I would come away with Freeling as my top tackle in this class.
What about wide receiver? Who is your top wide receiver? And then who's somebody you think that might be there if the Browns do go Freeling or another tackle at 6? Who would be there later in that first round?
Well, I always break down the receiver position by 4 different spots because you can't rank Randy Moss next to Wes Welker. Despite them playing the receiver, they play 2 different positions. So my number 1 X receiver is Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. My number 1 Z receiver, Ohio State's own Cornell Tate. Number 1 slot, Mekhi Lemon out of USC. And my number 1 big inside receiver that's kind of a cross between an X and a slot is also Denzel Boston. So any one of those 4 would be great for the Browns at 24. Now, outside of that, there's a bunch of guys. I told you this before. I'm a big Bryce Lance guy, Trey Lance's brother, out of North Dakota State, 6'3", 205, that can win short, intermediate, or deep down the field. I also like Ted Hurst of Georgia State. He reminds me so much of George Pickens and how he just kind of just goes to get the football and doesn't care about nobody around him. It's just him and the football and the quarterback out there on the field. I love that mentality. Malachi Fields, big body wide receiver that doesn't mind going up and playing above the rim, making a contested catch. I think that's a really good option as well. And Chris Brazell of Tennessee, 6'5", 200 pounds, that can really go. I love his physicality. I like how aggressive he is in blocking on the perimeter. And Casey Concepcion, another one. So this is, see how it rattled off so many wide receivers, but tackle, it was like straight one answer. Boom, this is the guy. So that I'm saying all that to say, this is a class where you can get any kind of wide receiver you want. And in my draft guide, I graded about 140 wide receivers. So it shows you the depth of the class in terms of where guys can rank and file and play football. But tackle is a little finite, and you find guys that can do it, you grab that guy early.
All right. Who are some guys that you think could go third round or later? So some of the diamonds in the rough that you think will have really productive NFL careers.
I would say, and I hate using diamonds in the rough for big program guys but nowadays all the small school guys and transfer it up to big pro, so you lose that element, right? But J. Michael Sturdivant of Florida is a very good wide receiver. I think people are sleeping on him. Zachariah Branch, people forget he was a star at USC, and that's the kind of guy that kind of fits that Zay Flowers mold that the Baltimore Ravens had under Todd Monken. I think he could do that here too. But if we're going deeper down the field, Jalen Farmer is my number one guard out of Kentucky. And also, I like his teammate, Joshua Braun of Kentucky. It was funny watching Kentucky linemen. There's like 4 of them in this class. And you're like, man, this offensive line is really good. Why did they stink? You know what I'm saying? And so they were very good up front. And Farmer is outstanding as a guard. So is Braun. Ivan Yates, cornerback, Colorado, underrated athlete. Click and close guy. Go watch his game versus Arizona State. That is a phenomenal talent that you'll find on day 3. Jacob DeJesus out of Cal. He was at UNLV, who was like 5'6", everything guy. Like they had him in the backfield. They had him as a slot receiver. He's an outstanding kickoff return and punt returner. He transfers to Cal, and he does the same thing there. He's still dynamic. I don't care if he's 5'6". That's a guy, especially now with this dynamic kickoff, would be ideal. That we could take Isaiah Bond or someone else off kickoff and have them solely dedicated to their receiver position and put him back there and let him just do damage as a specialist. And you could also mix him as a wildcat guy on offense. And Ryan Chernecki of Kutztown, offensive tackle. I was at the Hula Bowl this year, and you know the cool part about it, here's a classic Division II player, stayed at Kutztown, stayed at Division II, dominated, and he was out there at the Hula Bowl looking like he belonged alongside these FBS Power 5 guys because he was out there balling all throughout the week. And that's someone that's a legitimate 6'7", 310. So he has the size. He showed that he can handle up against bigger competition at the Hula Bowl, and he's also someone that checks out well athletically.
All right, before I let you go, Football Game Plan 2026 Draft Guide, where can folks find it?
footballgameplan.com/2026 draft guide. Go get your order today. Over 1,200 individual scouting reports, and that means if there's 1,207 names in it, there's 1,207 scouting reports, full color PDF. And if someone purchased my guide since 2020, right now they would have over 6,600 individual scouting reports. So the reason why I can ramble off all these names and understand everybody's roster from all 32 teams and the 9 CFL teams and the 8 UFL teams is because this guide has so many doggone scout reports. I kind of got a beat on everybody.
Emory Hunt, great stuff as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Emory.
Appreciate you.
Emory Hunt, make sure you check it out. CBS Sports, also Football Game Plan 2026 Draft Guide. Always good, insightful stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day, put a little play in your day.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers on Sports4CLE. Only a few games remaining in the regular season. Then Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs will have to shorten that rotation for the playoffs. The coach talked about the Cavs' depth.
That's been the one of the big positives about having to play so many guys. These guys are all ready. We'll have no hesitation calling on any of them in a playoff situation. And it always comes up. It's always one or two of these guys that surprise. So these guys are ready. Again, I give our depth a lot of credit for getting to this 50-win mark. Again, young guys keep getting better. We got good momentum heading into the playoffs. And it's a credit to our coaches, our performance team that keeps them ready physically. These guys, you never know when you're going to play. It's sporadic. Your minutes, your games. But I felt like all year we throw guys in and they're ready to hoop. Credit to the program we have going on.
Let's welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Chris, the depth, it's a good thing. It's going to, I would imagine Kenny's going to look at it and go, well, if this guy isn't on, you can't be patient in the playoffs, I guess is what I'm getting at.
You're right, Dave. And you can't wait from game 2 to game 3 or game 3 to game 4. You've got to do it in the moment. So it's going to be on Kenny to figure out, okay, what does the game call for? What does the series call for? And it's not going to be the same every night. It's not even going to be the same thing every series. Remember during the Cavs championship run, Ty Lue went to Dante Jones for one stretch, and it helped them. Right, last year, I don't think Rick Carlisle of the Indiana Pacers went into the series against the Cavs thinking to himself, at some point in the series, I'm going to need Tony Bradley. But he made that move, and those kinds of moves are the ones that tend to shift games, shift series, shift outcomes. And it can be 1 minute, it can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 minutes, it can be 20 minutes. If you are a role player on this team, that's what your role is. Be ready when you're called on. Not everybody is Donovan Mitchell, where minutes and touches and shots are going to be guaranteed, or James Harden, where minutes, touches, shots, those things are going to be guaranteed. If you're a role player, that's the definition of it. And I think the good thing, Dave, is that Kenny has options. This front office has given him options. If it's not a series for Keon Ellis, maybe it's a series for Dean Wade. If it's not a series for Max Strus, maybe it's a series for Jalen Tyson. If it's not for Jalen Tyson, maybe it's for Dean Wade. But it's going to be up to Kenny to push those buttons at the right times and make sure that he is a positive in terms of making a difference in a particular series. Because the wrong move on the other side of that could prove to be costly.
So we've talked about defense when we've talked before. Their three-point defense against Memphis was not good. And you wrote an article how that has to change come playoff time.
Just look at the potential opponents that the Cavs are going to see in the playoffs. Dave, there is no Memphis waiting for the Cavs in the playoffs. At the end of the game, I think they were playing 4 guys on 10-day contracts and another one on a 2-way contract. It's the most nondescript roster maybe in the last 10 years of the NBA. They have used 33 different players, the Memphis Grizzlies, 33, which is an NBA record because of the amount of injuries that they've had, because of the amount of organizational turmoil. So that team making 29 threes against the Cavs, Kenny can say what he wants. Got variance and shooting, just credit a team for an incredible shooting display that they had. How many times has Kenny said that, though, this year?
Yeah.
The Cavs have something to do with this. The Cavs had a lot to do with Memphis making 29 threes. They took 59, and the Cavs only contested 25 of them. Yeah. So that's part of the Cavs' problem. If they can't control the ball at the point of attack, the defense is going to start breaking down, and then they're going to get into rotation. These things happen consistently with this basketball team. They have a habit of overhelping. They have a habit of not trusting one another. They have a habit of closing out sloppily. They have a habit of getting these half-hearted contests that look like contests, but they are more like warm-up jumpers. This is a problem. The Cavs are the only playoff team, Dave, that is bottom 10 in the major historical categories defensively. And that's just not a good place to be. They're going to see maybe Boston. They're going to see maybe New York. They're going to see maybe Atlanta. All of those teams are prolific three-point shooting teams that if the Cavs don't get this corrected, and if they don't provide a better effort, or if they don't provide a better schematic game plan, these teams are going to be able to exploit this particular weakness. And you can talk about before the trades, after the trades. You can talk about who's healthy, who's not healthy. You can talk about all these different factors. The bottom line is the Cavs are bottom 10 in the NBA in guarding the three-point line. And that's been a running theme throughout the course of the season.
All right, as the Cavs look at this, are they thinking about the seeding as they look at their path? What's going into that whole thing? And I know you've written an article about that.
Well, Kenny admitted it the other night before the game against the Golden State Warriors that it is something that he is looking at. I've never heard a coach be so public about that. I don't think the players loved that because it's a bad reflection on them, and it kind of makes it look like they're ducking teams or they're quote unquote afraid of certain opponents. But yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of teams around the NBA that are looking at, look, if you're in the Western Conference, you want the Lakers right now. Of course you do. Or maybe you want the Minnesota Timberwolves right now because you feel like those teams are vulnerable in the state that they're in. And sometimes winning an NBA championship requires luck. Sometimes it's about the road that you get to travel in order to get there and who you get to avoid en route to that NBA championship or that finals appearance. So yeah, I think if you're asking the Cavs in a private moment, they would say deep down their top priority, if they were listing what they would consider favorable for them, it's avoid Boston. It's avoid Boston until you absolutely have to play them. They're the best team in the Eastern Conference. They're the favorites in the Eastern Conference. And they're a completely different team since Jason Tatum came back from his Achilles tear. So if you can get a path to the playoffs where you can stay in the 4-5 slot, and you only have to play one of Boston or New York, that's favorable, no matter how you look at it. Because Boston and New York are the two biggest threats to the Cavs getting to the NBA Finals. If they were to move up to the 3 seed and they were to overtake New York for that, now all of a sudden they potentially have to play Boston and New York in the same playoff run, and their chances of making the NBA Finals, I would say that they dwindle. So I don't know that the Cavs are looking at this saying, oh my God, we're scared of Boston, or oh my God, we're scared of New York. But I think they're saying, who could beat us? Who could beat us in a 7-game series? And is there a pathway for us to avoiding that many teams? The problem, Dave, is I think if they were listing the things that they would consider favorable, their top 2 are stay in the bracket that they're currently in, and maybe avoid Atlanta, surging Atlanta in round 1. And those two things aren't necessarily correlated. So they might have to pick which one they would consider more preferable. And I would say that's play Atlanta in round 1 and wait until the conference finals to have to play the Celtics.
All right, Jared Allen, what do we know about his injury, and how big does that factor into them reaching their potential in these playoffs?
Well, he's still on a minute restriction, and they're still having to do injury management related to his knee, and there's still around-the-clock maintenance to make sure that the knee is quote-unquote right again. So I've had people that have expressed doubts about Jarrett getting back to full strength, Jarrett getting back to the way that he was playing before this injury popped up in early March. Because if you watch him play, yeah, he's still effective. Yeah, he's still making an impact out there, but he doesn't look as explosive. He doesn't look like he's as quick. It doesn't look like he's got the same bounce and the same burst. And obviously, there is something wrong with his knee that they're continuing to lower his workload. They're continuing to keep him out of the second game of these back-to-backs. They're continuing to do this injury management. And I talked to Jarrett recently, and he expressed frustration with it because, yeah, he's dealt with tendonitis in the past, but it's just something where, okay, I take a couple of games off. I do certain kinds of treatments, and all of a sudden the inflammation goes down. All of a sudden the pain is no longer the same. But this one is lingering a little bit longer. So it's giving Jarrett a little bit more pause, and I think it's giving the organization a little bit more pause. And I don't think it's a situation where he's going to miss games in the playoffs. I think it's a situation, Dave, where he has to manage this thing, and he has to understand, okay, I might just have to play through pain. And it might be uncomfortable to come down after a dunk, or it might be more uncomfortable to make a certain kind of movement to go challenge a shot. And he might have to learn how to manage that throughout the course of a playoff run. But they need him at full strength. They need him to be the guy that he was in February when he was one of the best players in the Eastern Conference. They need him to set a tone of physicality and toughness and all that kind of stuff. And they need him to have the kind of playoff series that, quite frankly, over the last 3-4 years, he just hasn't had for the Cavs. He's going to be under the microscope. Evan Mobley's going to be under the microscope. And these guys got to be in the best condition possible physically and mentally for the Cavs to go on this deep playoff run that they're anticipating. And I think there has to be a little sense of worry that the version of Jarrett Allen that they're going to get in the playoffs might be a different one than what they were expecting because this knee continues to bother him.
Chris Fedor, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Chris.
You got it, Dave. Anytime, man.
Chris Fedor, make sure you check him out. Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Always good and insightful Cavs coverage. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.